Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Sons podcast. I am your co-host, Philip, and today's episode, it is just me. First of all, my wonderful brother, my host, the co-host of Two Sons podcast. Today is currently his relationship anniversary with his girlfriend, so he was out celebrating, bringing in some memories, having a good time. So I wish them the best of luck. Hopefully, they're having a good day and a good night, and they are enjoying their anniversary together. So, a little miniature round of applause for Joseph and his girlfriend as they celebrate their anniversary, which obviously leaves me to record by myself, as we usually record Thursdays, and it just so happens that their anniversary falls on a Thursday. Um, so for starters, this is actually going to be technically the first episode of the new year. So as you know, we saw you guys last in 2023 when we did our Christmas movie bracket showdown. Obviously that was a lot of fun. If you have not checked out that episode, go check it out. It will be like probably in this top of the corner at the end of the episode. So if you haven't watched it, you can just go click on it and watch it after this episode. Um, for those of you, we hope that you had a happy and merry holiday season. Whether you celebrate Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas, Yule, any other holiday celebrations during that time of year. We really hope that you had a good holiday season and you enjoyed the time with your family because obviously that is what is most important in life. So, from the bottom of our hearts here at Two Sons Podcast, we really wish that you and your family had a very happy holidays, and especially bringing into the new year. Hopefully, you guys were able to spend time with family and friends and bring in the beginning of 2024 with your loved ones or people that you care about. So again, from the bottom of our heart here at Two Sons Podcast, we hope that you had a happy holidays and a merry new year. So obviously, it is still bright and early in the 2024 season. So hopefully everybody's new year has been off to a great start. As I mentioned, these is going to be the official first episode of the new year. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to what I have to talk about today. We will be back obviously next week to our regularly scheduled programming. We have a lot of good content coming out for this year, especially for the beginning of this year. It is going to be very Star Wars heavy, which is why my episode is going to be a little polar opposite, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, we do have some exciting stuff lined up for 2024. We might do an episode on us going over the movies of 2023 and just how the year was for movies overall. We could possibly do one on up and coming 2024 movies and what to look out for. But as I mentioned, the focus is going to be very Star Wars heavy, as we've been hinting the last couple of weeks. So be excited for that content. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be really fun. And I'm really glad to dive into another, hopefully fruitful and successful year of Two Sons podcast. We just want to thank you guys so much for helping this podcast grow over the last couple of years. It's amazing that we've been doing this the last couple of years. And with the small knitted community and family that we have, we just always want to appreciate and thank you guys from the bottoms of our heart. No matter how many views, no matter how many clicks or followers we get, just seeing one or two views, to be honest, like makes my day. As I sit here in front of the camera and we sit here in front of the camera and talk for like, an hour or two and just really get into it and we could express what we love, and the fact that people will sit here and watch us do exactly that means the world to us. So I mean, obviously, we don't monetize this, we don't make any money off of this. We just do this because it's one of our favorite things to do, and we would just love to spread our message and our opinions to the communities as a whole. So again, thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts for supporting this podcast over the years. And like I said, hopefully that love and support continues on into the 2024 season. And let's see how much we can grow. So, the future only gets brighter. Um, so as I was hinting earlier, obviously, we are going to be doing, a very heavy start of the year, with Star Wars related content. However, I have had my mind on something the last couple of days, well, technically since the first, so the beginning of the new year. And, I thought because it's just me, myself, and I could do an episode on it. So, I mean, this will be a fairly short episode, maybe at least 25, 30 minutes, maybe even less, depending on how much I, jabber on and put words together, to be honest. Um, but I decided that I was going to kind of dip my toes back into Marvel a little bit, because there has been a general topic that has been on my mind for the last couple of days, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And then maybe I could learn something as well as everybody else could learn a little bit of something when it comes to this topic. And that topic, my dear friends, is X-Men. Now, if you are a fan of Marvel and the Marvel comics in general, obviously you have heard of the X-Men. As far as me and my brother are concerned, I think the Fox universe was probably the first little bit of like superhero movies that we were introduced to growing up. I think me and him grew up off the X-Men movies, and then especially the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. So those were really our first two like big genres when it came to superheroes, before we dabbled into the MCU, and then obviously with the Avengers and the Infinity Saga, and then that huge rabbit hole of Marvel and MCU. Um, so yes, so from a very young age, we were introduced to the X-Men and those movies, in the early 2000s, and that was really the start of our love for superheroes and Marvel. Even though obviously, this podcast tends to focus a lot on Star Wars. We do like to dip our toes into the other niches and the other franchises that we hold near and dear. When it comes to superheroes, we were definitely always more Marvel than we were DC. So we really do enjoy talking about Marvel every now and then. And like I said, what better way to kind of start off the new year by talking about the X-Men. So for this video, I don't really have too much plans. I was just kind of gonna um, read basically what I found on Wikipedia that basically just kind of explains like what the X-Men are, and I thought we can kind of go through it together. Find out some of the most important information, who they were, how they were created, and so on and so forth. And then I kind of wanted to talk about some upcoming projects or potential that the X-Men have over this next year of 2024. So as I mentioned, obviously, our love for X-Men, or I mean, my brother could tell you. I mean, he's definitely going to wish he was here for this episode, but he loves the X-Men. It's one of our favorite things that comes, within the Marvel universe. Obviously, not the MCU, because so far the X-Men have not been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was in the Fox universe. So when I say Marvel Universe, I'm just referring to Fox and the comic books, obviously. So obviously, that was our first taste of superheroes and everything, and there was just something about the X-Men and, the fact that, you had a huge number of unique individuals with all these different powers and abilities that just kind of really interested us the most. And we loved those movies growing up, and it's like I said, that and Spider-Man was really the two major things that pushed our love for superheroes forward. And obviously when the MCU rolled around, obviously, that was just the icing on the cake, and then obviously we spiraled down that rabbit hole along with Star Wars and all the other franchises that we loved. So, like I said, I mean, if he was here, he would tell you that he's such a huge X-Men fan. And honestly, what really got me thinking about it, to be honest, was obviously, me and him are really obsessed with Lego. And obviously, January 1st, they drop a couple of sets, for the start of the new year, all across different franchises, and they actually dropped a set for the X-Men. Now this set is actually based off of the. Let me see if I could. Let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Just give me 1 second. Let me just make sure this all looks good. Okay, cool. All right, let me just exit this real quick. All right. So yeah, this is actually what I was on before. So let me just show you guys real quick the two sets that they have for the X-Men. So I'm going to show you the most recent set first. I believe this came out January 1st. It had that January release set. And here it is. It is the X-Men uh X-Jet, basically. So obviously you saw the price point, but basically it is modeled off of the original X-Men classic TV show that aired from 1992 to 1996. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I have not watched it. I heard it is on Disney Plus. I currently have it in my watch list, ready to, be watched and explored. So I will definitely get back to you after I start watching it and let you know how I am enjoying it. But basically, this X-Jet is modeled off of what you see in that, 90s X-Men show, basically. So just kind of going through a couple of the screenshots, obviously very well detailed. You got cockpit. So sorry, you got cockpit space. That's the worst. That's probably the worst word to get a little bit of a brain fart on. You got plenty of room for minifigs in the cockpit. Some play features. Obviously, you see some of the classic 90s X-Men outfits with these minifigs. Obviously, you're gonna get Cyclops, Magneto, Rogue, and Wolverine, which again is super cool. This picture right here just really gives you a good idea of the scale and just how cool this build looks, to be honest. I'm super excited. Probably gonna use one of my Lego gift cards on it to to buy it. Um, because I just went on Whatnot today and I purchased the minifig of Beast and Storm that kind of go along with this 90s X-Men theme. So that is the most recent set that came out. Like I said, looks really well detailed, really good build. Obviously, I would not pay this price point. Ooh, it only has 2.5 stars. Huh, I wonder if a lot of that is because of the price. But again, this price point, I would not pay myself personally. If I did not have any gift cards or whatever, this would be a different story. I would wait until the set went on sale, or I would just collect the minifigs separate because that's actually something that I'm getting into. I'm starting to collect just minifigures for Lego in 2024. It's really cool. Um, but yeah, but because I have, gift cards from Christmas and the holidays, I might use it to knock down the price, to about 30, 40 bucks. That's a lot more reasonable than almost paying $90 after tax for this. But anyway, I digress. So this is the newest X-Men set when it comes to Marvel. Really cool. And then I believe this released last year. Do not quote me on it, but let me scroll down to it. Should be at the bottom over here. Yes, we have the Wolverines adamantium claws, basically. So I believe this came out last year, if I remember correctly. So again, this is obviously based off the 90s X-Men TV show, based off the Wolverine's outfit. Obviously, you have the blue, which is supposed to symbolize like the blue gloves that he basically wears. And then you have the how did they pronounce it again? I'm sorry. Yeah, adamantium claws. So these are not his like, organic bone claws. These are the metal claws that he eventually gets. Um, Again, even the box art honestly looks really cool. Looks really well done. And then when it's actually put together, it looks like a pretty decent build. It's not like as flashy as, some of the other gauntlets or helmets that we've seen, for the Marvel line. But I mean, you got some beautiful artwork on the back of the box, basically just showing you that it is from that 90s cartoon. And then again, even putting it together, I mean, it's a pretty decent size. It almost looks like you could like, wear it as a glove, to be honest. And especially, the nice little plaque that you get with the build has that classic X-Men's logo from the 90s, which kind of gives you more that nostalgia feel. So these are really the only two sets that they actually have anything X-Men related for. But because they are dropping lines from, the X-Men 97, it is possible that we will see more stuff in the future, but obviously as of now, we do not know. For those of you that are wondering, when it comes to the X-Men 97, so the original cartoon series ran from 1992 to 1996. However, I just found out recently that I believe, somewhere around the beginnings of 2024, so I don't know if it's this month or maybe next month or March, just all I know is like, early 2024. Basically, the writer and director that created the 90s cartoon for the X-Men is actually working with Disney to basically create a continuation of that animated series that is going to be airing on Disney Plus. And I think hence that's why they are calling it X-Men 97 because it's kind of like a little bit of like a nod to the original cartoon. As again, it ended in 1996. So if this is a continuation, then they're just saying that, oh, now it's X-Men 97 and it's going to continue in 1997. So I really hope it has some of that classic kinda like, in early '90s, animation style. I mean, obviously, animation has came a long way, from the '90s, but there is just something kinda very authentic, about this, animation style that I really do enjoy. Let me just see if I could, uh, let me see if I can spell '90s correctly. Uh, see if I could find any images from the show. Yeah, but I mean, this is a good example. So I mean, again, just looking at somebody like Rogue, I mean, just this animation style is actually just very well done. I mean, for the 90s, she looks very good. So if they kind of continue this style, honestly, in 2024, maybe just update it a little bit so maybe it runs a little bit more smooth, or you could tell it's maybe updated more. But again, I mean, that would be really cool. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I mean, like I said, I have the original cartoon on my watch list. I'm probably going to start watching that this month, just to get a feel. I think it's like 5 or 6 seasons long each of the seasons are, but I mean, again, I'll find out. Oh, so yeah, so that's basically where the inspiration for this video basically came from. Came from this set, and then the other set that I showed you in the beginning as well. So moving on, that's what gave me the obviously idea to do a video on this. So as I mentioned before, let me just one. Okay. As I mentioned before, I decided to pull up good old Wikipedia because obviously Wikipedia is super accurate, and obviously everybody should be using this for whatever they need to be using it for. But they usually offer a pretty good consensus, and overview of different topics and content. So I thought, what, this would be a great way for us to kind of sit down and just kind of go over exactly, where the X-Men came from, who they were, and what their mark has been, when it came to superheroes and just, Marvel in general. Um, so right away, obviously, we're going to just read the first paragraph here real quick. So we see that the X-Men are a superhero team appearing in American comic books, published by Marvel Comics, created by artist slash co-plotter Jack Kirby and writer-editor Stan Lee. Okay, so we see obviously the godfather of Marvel and Stan Lee, being the writer and editor of the X-Men comic books. And then obviously we see the artist slash co-plotter, which probably means that him and Stan Lee were kind of like working in coherence, just like how me and Joey worked together for the podcast. But they were the ones that put their heads together and created the plot and the um, characters for the X-Men. And then obviously Jack Kirby was responsible for the art, and then Stan Lee was responsible for the editing and writing. Um, so we have these two come together. The team first appeared in X-Men #1, which the comic apparently came out in September 1963. So that was actually about, if my math serves me correctly, almost about like 30 years before the original TV show came out in the 90s. So we see that the X-Men had like a long-standing history of about 30 years before they were actually introduced in that little animated series. So, although initially canceled in 1970 due to low sales, which is unfortunate, following its 1975 revival and subsequent direction under writer Chris Claremont, became one of the most recognizable and successful franchises of Marvel Comics. They have appeared in numerous books, television shows, the Disney's 20th Century X-Men films, and video games. The X-Men title may refer to the superhero team itself, the comic series, or the broader franchises, including various solo titles and team books such as New Mutants, Excalibur, and X-Force. Obviously, X-Force being the most recent team from the Deadpool movies, which is kind of funny that they included it in that little paragraph. So obviously, like just like every other Marvel project, we see that the X-Men had their initial beginnings in 1963 under the direction of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and they appeared in a couple of comic books. Now we see that they had, a pretty decent comic line of about 7 years. Unfortunately, it was canceled for a brief time in 1970 due to low sales. Obviously, I guess maybe too many people weren't that interested in the characters, or maybe just the plot of the X-Men. However, somehow I just want to see if I highlighted if it's going to tell us why it revived. Yeah, so it seems like maybe it's responsible for this comic book, the Giant Size X-Men Volume 1. Was a special issue of the X-Men comic book series published by Marvel Comics in 1975. It was written by Lee Wen and illustrated by Dave Cockrum. Um, Though it not a regular issue, it contained the first new X-Men story in 5 years, titled Second Genesis. So this was possibly one of the very first comics to come back after that 5 year hiatus, and the revival of maybe the 70s just kind of pushed the X-Men back onto the stage. And then obviously, as the paragraph mentioned, it became one of the most recognizable and successful franchises of the Marvel comics, along with Fantastic Four and Avengers and so on and so forth. Um, and then obviously we see that, it has appeared in a number of books, television shows, which includes the classic 90s cartoon, Disney's 20th Century X-Men films, which were produced by like Fox, which is obviously what me and my brother grew up with, and, some occasional video games. Speaking of video games, apparently there's a Wolverine video game that I believe is coming out this year, I think. So again, that's just some more love for X-Men coming out this year as well. So just kind of going down a little bit. Okay, so we kind of got an idea of like, where the X-Men come from, where their origins are. Now, exactly who are they? So, in the Marvel Universe, mutants are humans who are born with a genetic trait called the X gene, which grants them natural superhuman abilities, generally manifesting during puberty. Due to their differences from the majority of humanity, mutants are subject to prejudice and discrimination. Many X-Men stories feature social commentary on bigotry, justice, and other political themes. The X-Men have fought against a variety of enemies, including villainous mutants, human bigots, supervillains, mystical threats, extraterrestrials, and malevolent artificial intelligence. In most iterations of the team, they are led by their founder, Charles Professor X Xavier, a powerful telepath who runs a school for mutant children out in his mansion in Westchester, New York, which secretly is also the headquarters of the X-Men. Their stories have frequently involved Magneto, a powerful mutant with control over magnetic fields, who is depicted as an old friend, and foe, I guess, and it says and foil, but I guess maybe foe, to Xavier, variously acting as an adversary or an ally. And then the current iteration of the official X-Men team is headquartered in the Treehouse, a Krakoan base in New York City, and the roster is voted on by their fellow mutants in elections held at periodic Hellfire galas. No longer working in secret, they fight publicly for the safety of mutants, to build bridges between Krakoa and human nations, and to protect the Earth and solar system from extraterrestrial threats. Um, so obviously a lot to take in. So we see that, when it comes to the X-Men, their place in the Marvel universe is basically as mutants. Now, obviously, we've been told that mutants are basically people that are born with genetic trait called the X gene, hence the X-Men, referring to like a group of like men and women who have this, genetic trait, which obviously grants them natural superhuman abilities. And then it just somehow manifests, during puberty, which is when I guess a lot of them find out. Obviously, over time, these people are kind of gathered together in one place and they're led by, their leader and founder, Charles Professor X Xavier, who, like everybody else, has one of these X genes, which allows him to be a powerful telepath who runs the school for the mutant children to kind of help them like understand their powers and use them for good, out of his mansion in Westchester, New York, which obviously we've seen multiple times, like, in the 20th Century Fox X-Men films, and I'm sure, it probably made some appearances in the classic cartoon series as well. So besides Charles Xavier, we also see a nod to Magneto, who is obviously an old friend, which we see again in the movies. But then he also sometimes is a foe. Obviously, him and Charles have their own ideas and beliefs, so they kind of butt heads from time to time. But at the end of the day, I would like to think that they're definitely friends, but just have differences like everybody in the world does. So yeah, so that basically gives us the general rundown. So we see that the X-Men were created in comic form in 1963 by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. We see that although they had a short cancellation, they made a huge revival in 1975 and obviously spawned TV shows, books, movies, comics, etc. We know that the X-Men themselves are humans that are granted a genetic trait called the X gene, which obviously gives them superhuman abilities. um, and because these humans are popping up with this X gene, someone by the name of Charles Xavier created a school for these X-Men where these children can grow and learn their powers and become, people, for good, basically. And obviously, we see alongside Magneto, the X-Men, hence are formed. Um, and obviously the rest is history, basically. Um, so, we already went kind of over the background and creation, obviously in 1963 with the success of Spider-Man, the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and the Fantastic Four. Co-creator Stan Lee wanted to create another group of superheroes, but did not want to have to explain how they got their powers. In 2004, Lee recalled, "I couldn't have everybody bitten by a radioactive spider or exposed to a gamma ray explosion. And I took that cowardly way out. I said to myself, why don't I just say they're mutants? They are born that way." And then, piggybacking off of that, in 1987 interview, Kirby said, "The X-Men, I did the natural thing here. What would you do with mutants who were just plain boys and girls and certainly not dangerous? You school them, you develop their skills. So I gave them a leader, Professor X, of course. It was the natural thing to do instead of disorienting or alienating people who were different from us. I made the X-Men part of the human race, which they were. Possibly radiation, if it is beneficial, may create mutants that'll save us instead of doing us harm. I felt that if we train the mutants our way, they'll help us and not only help us, but achieve a measure of growth in their own sense, and so we could all live together." Now, I mean, honestly, that both words from Lee and Kirby there basically just beautifully sum up the ideals behind the X-Men and basically how they were founded. Obviously, Stan Lee wanted to create a new group of heroes, and then obviously Kirby piggybacked off of that, basically creating the X-Men as not, people or humans that were different from ordinary people, right? They weren't bitten by anything radioactive. They didn't fall into any gamma ray explosion, or they weren't exposed to anything radioactive, but they were just born this way. They were born with a specific trait, with a specific gene, and obviously that made them different from others, but not so much different in the sense that they still belonged to humanity as a whole. And I think that's the most important thing to take away from the X-Men and just who these people are, because at the end of the day, they're still human. They were born differently. They didn't ask to be born this way, but they learned to overcome their abilities, learn to use them for good, and then help out the rest of humanity. And that's one of the most important lessons in life. I mean, obviously, of course, we probably have some mutants that use their powers for evil, and then obviously use them for good. But at the end of the day, what's the most important thing to take out of this little interview from Jack Kirby is that these mutants are people too. And that's probably why so many people love the X-Men, because obviously people could relate to maybe feeling different or feeling, a little bit unique, from everybody else. Which obviously is an amazing message. Um, and let's see, I mean, is there anything else I want to cover? I mean, we can probably just go over, maybe a couple of the different X-Men. So obviously, early X-Men issues introduced the original team composed of Cyclops. So let's see if it'll show us a picture. So we got Cyclops here, Marvel Girl, or known as Aline Gray, or just I believe she's just Jean Grey, but she actually has a name, which is actually interesting. I didn't know that she was called Marvel Girl. Beast, we have Angel. Sounds very familiar. I believe he was in one of the X-Men movies. And Iceman. Again, I think same thing. He was also in one of the movies. But then we also have some interesting ones. We also have someone by the name of Mastermind. We have Quicksilver, which obviously everybody knows and love, and then we have Scarlet Witch and Toad. Okay, I had never heard of Toad before. And then obviously we have some like other very well-known ones like Nightcrawler. We have the Wolverine. We have Storm. We have Rogue. And so on and so forth. We have Magneto, obviously. And I think that's pretty much gonna basically cover. I mean, we could do a quick team roster real quick. Um, So obviously, again, the X-Men team lineup has varied throughout the years and splintered into several other newer teams. The original team lineup introduced Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Angel, and Iceman, as well as Professor X. However, later issues brought fan favorites and frequent members such as Wolverine, which we see right here, Storm, we have Colossus, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Kitty Pryde, which she sounds familiar, Jubilee, Domino, Gambit, Emma Frost, Psylocke, Havoc, Dazzler, Polaris, Bishop, Forge, and then finally Banshee. And then obviously again down here we have Magneto. And then, we have a couple of the foes down here. So we have Mystique, we have Apocalypse, we have Mr. Sinister, and these robots called the Sentinels, as well as a villain team called the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and the Hellfire Club were some of the adversaries that the X-Men would face. So let me actually, oh, hold on. I'm trying to, sorry, I don't know if I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'm trying to bring up the Zoom recording so I can stop sharing my screen, and it is buffering, so I'm getting kind of nervous. Hopefully I did not buffer out or anything. Up, and then I got the white screen. Uh-oh, this is not good. Sorry, folks. I mean, this is one of the very unique things about Two Sons Podcast is that we do it live and we don't go back and we don't cut out um interruptions, or we don't cut out mistakes. We just kind of um do it as it is. Uh is there any way I can get to this? I'm just trying to wait for this program to respond. I mean, I would hate to close it and then just lose everything that I just spoke about. That would be very unfortunate. But I guess while we kind of sit here and wait, continue talking a little bit more about the X-Men, and just kind of wrapping up this conversation. So obviously, in today's episode, we learned a couple of things about the X-Men. So we found out when they were originally created. So Stan Lee and a man named Jack Kirby, basically in 1963, they put their heads together and they created the superhuman group known as the X-Men, and created the first comic for the X-Men. Now we see that they had a pretty, decent 7-year span until about 1970, when unfortunately it was canceled due to low popularity. However, after a 5-year hiatus, it came back in 1975, when more comic issues were put into production. And after 1975, obviously we see that the X-Men gained more popularity, and obviously we saw them branch out into different books, comics, TV shows, movies, so on and so forth. Um, Obviously, the message behind the X-Men is that these were people with a genetic mutation known as the X gene. So they were humans, but some of them has adapted specific superhuman abilities based off of a genetic trait that they inherited when they were born. Seeing all these young children kind of struggling to find their place in the world, somebody by the name of Charles Xavier created a school for the mutants, and the children to come and learn about who they are, how to control their powers and their abilities, and obviously use them for good. Hence the creation of the X-Men, obviously, as they grow up. And then we see that the X-Men started out with a very specific few characters, but obviously over time we have more characters added to the mix. And then obviously we see our X-Men fight a number of different adversaries over the years, throughout, different comics and movies and whatnot. And then obviously, because of the success of the X-Men and how beloved they've become as a franchise. Obviously, fast forwarding to 2024, we can see that the X-Men are still appreciated and loved to this day. Obviously, Lego has branded them with two Lego sets. Obviously, the first one coming in Wolverine's claws, obviously from the 90s TV show. And then we see that they also recently came out with the X-Jet from the 90s TV show as well, showing a little bit more love there, which is really cool. We see that they've even released some like minifigures and those like little blind boxes. I believe Storm and Beast and Wolverine were the three figures that you can get in that blind box. So again, just showing more love to that X-Men 1997 cartoon, which is really cool. Obviously, we see that the classic cartoon is getting a continuation added to it to Disney Plus very soon. We know that there are rumors of the X-Men coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously, spoiler alert for those of you that have not seen the Marvels. We see that there is a post-credit scene with the Beast, showing that we have our first sighting of a mutant within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we know that the X-Men and the mutants are eventually going to be coming. to the MCU. We just do not know when, unfortunately. Um, and then, last but not least, I'm probably missing some stuff, but then we also have the Wolverine game, coming to PlayStation alongside the likes of like Marvel's Spider-Man and then Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. So again, a lot of love to the X-Men this year. And hopefully, for the upcoming future, because again, they have been a beloved franchising group, for me and my brother growing up, and I would love to see them in a more updated fashion and to really, have them get the limelight again. Um, let's see. Yeah, see, I'm afraid to lose this recording if I just stop it. Unfortunately, I've been sitting here for a while, guys. To be honest, I don't even know if you can still hear me, but I'm just hoping that the program is still running somewhere. Even though I'm not currently seeing anything on my end. But that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for coming out and just, hearing my little rant and spiel about the X-Men. And, maybe you learned a little bit of, of stuff that I did, because I definitely learned a few things that I wasn't too sure of. And now I have a pretty decent and pretty firm understanding of exactly, where they come from and basically what I need to know to kind of fill in some gaps, because obviously it's been a couple of years. So it's always nice to refresh myself a little bit. So like I said, hopefully you guys learned something too. This was actually really fun to kind of sit down and talk. Um, Worst case scenario, if I finish this recording and I lost everything, I will probably sit down and do all this tomorrow night again. But like I said, fingers crossed that even if I close the program, the video will save and everything will be, as it should be. But again, thank you guys so much for coming out tonight to our very first episode of 2024. Super excited to be back in the new year. We got a lot of great stuff to look forward to. So please join us next week when we come back, the two of us, and just stay tuned to see what we got in store. But before I go, you could find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Two Sons Podcast. So it's with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. You could also find us on TikTok and YouTube at Two Sons Podcast. Again, that was with an O, not a U, because we're two brothers. If everything goes well, this episode should be releasing tomorrow morning. However, if this happens to be corrupted and it just does not save, then I will be uploading this video Saturday morning. So just check the socials, stay up to date with them, and just be on the lookout for this episode to release. I will do the same thing, and I will send the footage to my brother. When he will update Spotify, I do not know. So again, just please follow the socials to keep up to date on all that. Um, but with that being said, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and listening to my conversation about who the X-Men are and what we can look forward to in the future. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a great night, great day, great afternoon whenever you're listening. Please do not do anything stupid. Please really enjoy the beginning of this new year. Hopefully you've made some really nice resolutions for yourself. And with that being said, here's the 2024. Thank you guys so much for staying with us for all these years and we will see you all in the next episode. Goodbye for now.